A federal jury finds 5 local gang members, including a former DeKalb County police officer, guilty on all charges. Those men are members of the Gangster Disciples, responsible for 12 murders and a dozen other shootings that weren't fatal. As for the former officer, Vancito Gums, he worked as a self-professed hitman for the gang while serving on the DeKalb County police force. All 5 men were convicted on charges including racketeering, conspiracy, and murder.
Was this cop a Gangster Disciples executioner? Wrong side of the law. An Army vet turned cop allegedly performed hits for the fearsome Gangster Disciples street gang. According to a massive federal indictment, the alleged hitman was with a young son. But not long after Vancito Gums served this country, he was serving the violent Gangster Disciples street gang. Authorities say Gums is one of 32 people named in a federal indictment targeting Gangster Disciples leaders and their henchmen, who are accused of a slew of racketeering charges, including murder, drug trafficking, and wire fraud.
The FBI worked with the U.S. Attorney's Office to bring down 38 members in leadership here in Atlanta.
There were people who lived in this community who were afraid to go about their daily lives because of this gang's violence.
Ryan Buchanan prosecuted the case and says a lot of local murders that happened in Metro Atlanta were eventually tied back to the gang. He said the violence against children is particularly hard to deal with.
Meanwhile, in Tennessee, the feds charged 16 more alleged gang members as part of the Southern bust. Authorities say the 23-year-old Gums was an officer with the DeKalb County Police Department, while also acting as a hired killer for the notorious gang. I'm saddened to learn one of our former officers was involved in this, DeKalb County Police Chief James Conroy said at a news conference Wednesday. There are bad apples in every organization. This was a bad apple.
I was saddened and disappointed to find out that one of our former officers was one of the members that was indicted.
Conroy added, the indictment describes Georgia's Gangster Disciples underworld, where membership dues are collected and budding gangsters are taught to peddle drugs or torch their cars and homes to collect insurance money. According to the indictment, Gangster Disciples outlaws committed 10 murders, 12 attempted murders, and fraud of more than $450,000. They allegedly generated income through drug trafficking, robbery, carjacking, wire fraud, bank fraud, and credit card fraud. And, according to court documents, they shot a 17-year-old in the chest after he walked in front of their music video shoot wearing the wrong color. The shooter believed the teen insulted the disciples. Enforcers also extorted a rapper identified only as RR, who was forced to pay the gang for use of its name and symbols. Prosecutors say, court papers are littered with the nicknames of Gangster Disciples stalwarts: Smurf, Spike, Detroit Red, Blackjack, Shaky, or simply OG. If Gums had a nom de guerre, it wasn't listed in the indictment. The Stone Mountain resident is also the son or close relative of a police officer, public records show. Vancito Gums, who is also Facebook friends with the alleged hitman, is a retired captain with the Virgin Islands Police Department. The younger Gums resigned from cop duty in DeKalb County in October 2015, while under investigation by his superiors. According to Conroy, the department looked into Gums after receiving a complaint that he was using illegal drugs. Around that time, Gums admitted to killing people as a hitman for the Disciples. According to court papers, it's unclear who Gums allegedly confessed to. However, in the documents, he also allegedly helped the gang by tipping them off to police raids. Chief Conroy couldn't say whether Gums was a police officer or Gangster Disciples member first, when asked by a reporter. Still, Gums was a policeman when he traveled with the gang's chief enforcer in Georgia to take care of GD business in fall of 2015. Court papers state that enforcer, Kevin Clayton, was allegedly responsible for ensuring members were in good standing and followed the gang's rules and regulations. Clayton was also arrested in the federal roundup. The indictment states the enforcer meted out punishments, including kill on-site orders. In September 2015, Clayton told Gums that company defendant Donald Glass was Clayton's right-hand guy, according to the indictment. Clayton and Glass allegedly founded the Gangster Disciples Hate Committee, which was a cleanup crew that administered discipline, including assaults and killings. Then Clayton bragged that Gangster Disciples had infiltrated police departments and the parole office. The indictment says, around that time, Gums posted an image on Facebook of Jack Nicholson as the Joker, standing behind and holding the shoulders of Heath Ledger as the same Batman character. My favorite kinds of people, Gums wrote in a comment. On October 1, 2015, Clayton asked Gums to find out what DeKalb County Police were investigating on a certain road. And the allegedly crooked cop later informed Clayton it was a shooting, court papers state. 2 days later, Gums phoned Clayton to deliver another piece of intel. He should stay away from a sports bar police were raiding. Documents say, Clayton also allegedly requested Gums to bring him a gun. According to the indictment, the Gangster Disciples began in Chicago after the leaders of two different gangs, the Black Disciples and the Supreme Gangsters, joined forces in the 1970s. It's now active in 24 states. The gang's hierarchy is based on the premise that the enterprise will be ready to step in and run the United States should its government fail, the indictment claims. Their national chairman, identified in court papers as LH, but referring to Larry Hoover, is incarcerated but still communicates with gang leadership. Hoover, 65.
I've thought. What have you thought? What are the thoughts like on a day-to-day basis? Incarceration. Well, basically, you think about preparing yourself for the future and preparing yourself for one day when you will return to the streets. You're prepared? Yes, I'm prepared. I've got employment. I want to do something for the community. I see these kids coming in here every day with 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Their life is wasted just like I wasted mine.
Is in America's toughest prison, the federal supermax ADX Florence in Colorado, where he was transferred after running a drug ring in an Illinois clink. Fellow inmates include the worst of the worst. 9/11 attacks conspirator Zacarias Moussaoui, the Unabomber, and Boston Marathon bomber. Atlanta has historically been resistant to the incursion of these national gangs, but unfortunately his indictment shows how this landscape has changed, Horn said in a prepared statement, adding, "We hope this indictment warns the leaders of these gangs that Atlanta is not a good place to do business."
The U.S. Attorney's Office says the Gangster Disciples use charitable organizations as fronts for their illegal activity. And according to the indictment, Vancito Gums bragged that he was a hitman for the organization. DeKalb District Attorney Robert James says gang members pretended to mentor young men, but really just led them into a life of crime.
They recruit our young men. And so they don't just bring futures to a violent end, but they also lure these young men away from a path of straight and narrow.